people need it. They just don't even know that it exists. So they're just going in normal vehicles, folding up wheelchairs.
Hey, like there's this whole industry that exists. This is a thing, like people run entire businesses based off.
Welcome back to NEMT Experts. I've got with me Alex Stoia, who has come to bring his family's NEMT business into the modern era. Alex, how you doing?
I'm doing good. I'm doing good. How about yourself?
Doing wonderful. Thanks for being on. So Alex, you recently moved from Los Angeles back home to New Mexico to join your family's NEMT business, Corazon Concierge, and introduce technology, drive efficiencies, and build up the business. Can you tell us about what prompted that and how it's been for you so far?
Yeah, absolutely. So actually, Los Angeles is technically home originally, and that's where I was born and raised. Previously was working there for a remote company in the e-commerce field. Kind of like e-commerce product management is what I was doing before this. So about a year and a half, a little less than 2 years ago, I moved back to Santa Fe, New Mexico, or I moved to Santa Fe, New Mexico, which is where my parents had retired to, essentially. And then in their retirement, they had started a small NEMT business, basically. So they bought a couple wheelchair vans, decided to start the business. I moved back to Santa Fe originally just based on my company being remote, kind of getting closer to family and everything. And then over the past year, living with my parents, kind of seeing them run their day-to-day operations, getting interested in the company. Slowly but surely, we kind of started having conversations about me possibly joining. I started asking more questions about the business and how they were running things. And that led over to me joining the company just about a month ago. So around that time, and a little before that time, I started doing a lot of research into NEMT, just the whole industry, essentially, and then also comparing to what my parents have going on and identifying a software that we could use for tracking and taking trip orders and everything that is involved with it was basically the number one thing on my to-do list. When I started with them, they were operating in a very old school type of way, taking orders pen and paper, kind of figuring everything out on their own as far as scheduling our drivers and everything like that. So Bambi was the software I identified, got it installed and up and running pretty quickly. And so we've been using it for essentially since I started with them now. Basically, it was the first thing I did was to get it going. And that's kind of my story to how I got where I am today.
Cool.
Yeah.
Can you tell us about the business itself? So Corazon Concierge is the name of your family's NEMT business.
Yeah.
How many vehicles do you operate with? What kinds of vehicles? When was the business started? And where do you get your rides from? Can you just tell us a bit about the business?
Yeah, absolutely. So my parents started this in 2018. And at that time, it was one standard regular car, a Prius they had at the time, and one ADA minivan. So that's what they started it with. And they started it again, kind of the old school way, just reaching out to friends and family, getting some business stuff up there in the business community here in Santa Fe, and starting to gather customers and clients. Santa Fe has a older population, essentially, so there is a need for this type of business here, and that's what originally gave them the idea when they started it, just identifying it as a need for the community. And then once they started going, they had some success in gaining customers and everything. At this point, we are at 2 ADA minivans and a RAV4, so another regular car for ambulatory rides, and looking into when we're going to get our next minivan to try and expand a bit. And they've over time built up a decent little client list. They have their website, which brings in a decent amount of calls a week. And then they are part of a number of different professional communities here in Santa Fe, kind of in the health network field that they've created some relationships with. We do have a partnership with a medical office, essentially, here in Santa Fe that does a number of different things. They have a regular medical office, then dental and eye care and everything like that. So we have a contract with them that we do work with and give rides on a consistent basis. And we also work with Motive Care as our main broker. We really don't do too much with Motive Care. We do a decent amount on a weekly basis, but they're searching for more carriers in New Mexico because we don't have the most NEMT providers, essentially. So yeah, so those are our main kind of points of business right now. I'd say overall probably about 50% private pay clients, so just individuals who we get either via our website or networking, getting referrals and things of that nature. And the other 50% are kind of the doctor's office relationships that we have in Motive Care. Yeah.
Where do you see the business going in the next year, 3 years?
Yeah, that's a great question. That's something I'm thinking about a lot. My main goal is to get 2 more new ADA vans operating within 2 years. That's kind of the limit I've set myself, which I feel like is very doable. Obviously, hopefully much sooner than 2 years is my goal to get them operating. So long term, I would like to see us get to close to 10 ADA vans that are essentially consistently busy, consistently operating every day, and taking on as many rides as possible. There's a decent amount of medical hospitals and medical practitioners here in Santa Fe and Albuquerque, which is kind of our sister city here in New Mexico. So looking to create some contracts, hopefully, with some of those companies. I know, again, like I mentioned earlier, non-medical emergency transportation, there's not that many providers in New Mexico. So I do think we're meeting a need that needs to be met. It's just about finding those relationships and really making them work. So yeah, in my mind, long-term goal, get close to 10 vans, have them busy all the time. We also right now do some caretaking. We contract out some caretakers and manage with them. Since I've come on with the company, that's been something we're kind of steering away from. So we're kind of trying to drop the caretaking business and just be full transportation, and that being like our main thing. So that's going pretty well. Obviously, it's a bit of a transition, but I would say that's part of my future vision as well, is kind of just having everything focused on transportation, getting the caretaking wrapped up in a sense. Yeah, and that's where I see us going.
Okay, very cool. Tell me this, like you mentioned that you have a website, people come and book trips directly, right?
Yeah, or we just have like an order form where they'll submit it to us and then we'll give them a call, take the order.
Okay, and then you also have your relationships with healthcare facilities in the Santa Fe area where you have probably your contracts with them, and you get rides that way. What is sort of the breakdown of, like, people just coming to your website to like book, request rides versus rides coming from facilities? And is there any way that you want to shift that ratio?
Yeah, so right now our breakdown, I would say, is close to 50-50 if you're saying private pay clients, and then all of our contracts and brokers combined together. So between our contracts and brokers, that's about 50% of the rides we're giving. Private pay is about the other 50%. Changes month to month, but we, from our business standpoint, are definitely leaning towards the private pay side of the business. Now, a number of our contracts are private pay contracts. Like, we're not getting those obviously through a broker or anything. So that's something where we really feel like the opportunity exists and we have the ability to meet the need. We're just trying to get out there and make those relationships happen. So we're trying to lean a little further away from Motive Care and the other brokers and lean into private pay contracts with specific facilities and hospitals themselves, and then obviously the individual clients and everything like that who we get via our website and referrals and things of that nature.
Okay, So like in terms of like contracts with facilities themselves, I mean, that's something that you want to lean more into, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. What is sort of like your main way of doing that now? And can you share me like, I mean, just numbers wise, like how many facilities do you work with and have contracts with as of now?
So as of right now, we only have one official contract with a facility. I would say we have 4 facilities that we actually work with. The other 3 are basically just verbal agreements that they'll use us, and they do. So it's working out well. Um,
And do the facilities themselves pay for the rides?
yeah, yeah. So we do a weekly invoice, send them the invoice at the end of the week of everything that's on their list. I think we kind of have a couple notes down that they've told us like, hey, if it's getting above this number or close to this range, like let us know to kind of keep it within their budget. Um, but yeah, generally speaking, they're paying for it. The facilities, we don't deal with any like the individuals that we're giving rides for the facilities. They don't have to pay for anything or anything like that. So yeah.
Interesting that it's just a verbal agreement, no contract, and like you just have that good relationship with these 3 facilities that you'll just send them the
Yeah.
invoices and they'll pay based on whatever you had verbally agreed to with whoever manages transportation there.
Yeah, it is a little bit interesting. And it's, I mean, credit to my parents. They're very nice people and good people, and they've made a lot of really good relationships in the community. And I think that's really where that kind of stems from. The trust was just there with these specific people who we have those relationships with. Um, yeah, in the back of my mind, I've always been like, can we get this like hammered out in a contract or something just so we know? But like I said, like they are using us. The relationships are really good. Um, they follow our private pay pricing. So as long as the agreement's going well, we're not pushing too hard to change too much. But I think it's one of those things where, again, with Bambi, some of the functionality that you guys offer, that's definitely in my mind as like going to these facilities as we're trying to get more contracts and trying to kind of smooth things out a bit as far as how we're taking all of our orders, offering them the ability to log into their own version of Bambi, obviously not the full app, but log in, put a ride in when they have an order. I can say that's definitely something I've already pitched to a couple of people in meetings that I've had, and it's certainly a functionality I'm trying to get the relationships we already have kind of on board with and used to doing that type of thing as well, and show them kind of makes their lives a little easier as well as our lives a little easier. So yeah, that's kind of where we're at.
Very cool. And with the 4 facilities that you work with right now and all your private pay and broker work, do you feel like your current fleet, you're at 4 vehicles now?
Three total.
Three vehicles. Like, do you feel like your vehicles are at capacity right now?
Not fully. That's another thing I'm tracking with the help of Bambi, kind of.
Mhm.
Taking exports of the amount of rides we're doing per day, and everything like that. So I would say 2 out of our 3 vehicles are at capacity right now. We're kind of working on getting that 3rd one inched up, and then once it gets closer to a specific amount of rides per day, that's when we're going to start looking into getting that next van. So yeah, no.
Okay. And like leaning more into private pay and like contracts with facilities,
Mhm.
are you going to be the one sort of driving that, to get more business coming in?
Yeah. So I'm kind of leading the way with all that. I've been doing a decent amount of reach out since I joined the company. These local community networks, basically just going to every single event that I can think of and that's going on, just trying to meet as many people and kind of ingratiate myself into the community. And yeah, no, I'm leading the way with all that. It's been going good so far. Obviously, it's a long road ahead, but I feel really good about how everything's going.
Yeah, oh, that's great. So your strategy is to just go to events in the community and spread the word about your NEMT business, Corazon Concierge.
Yeah. So right now, my parents, there's a couple small business network communities that they're a part of. That's kind of the starting off point for me, just because we're already a part of those networks. And my parents are kind of not only the sales and networking people of the business, but my father is the main driver essentially right now, and my mother's the main dispatcher essentially. So with all of that, they're busy all day long, running around doing a million things, and it's kind of left me with like, okay, well, we need someone to step out into the world and kind of yell to everybody what we do and how we do it. So yeah, that's the role I've been taking. And yeah, kind of doing a lot of research on the different offices and medical facilities that exist in the area and creating some reach out lists to start making those calls and emails, along with the community organizations I've already kind of been joining.
Okay, very cool. Let me ask you this, like, a number of people go to Corazon Concierge's website, they find the form to book a ride, they go and do that. How are you helping people to even find Corazon Concierge? Like, is it that someone has to know that your business exists already and they go to Corazon Concierge, or are they searching for, NEMT services in Santa Fe? Like, how are people coming to your website?
Yeah, so it's a mixture of both. Again, that's something I've kind of been trying to do since I joined the company, is kind of getting our SEO optimized and those parts of the website just updated and kind of keeping it up to date as things move along. But generally, it's people who are either referred to us, or, I mean, we do come up in searches a decent amount. Kind of getting on top of our SEO will hopefully improve that even more than where it's already at. So yeah, it's a combination between individuals who are referred to us, so they already know the website, and then we do some advertising, trying to optimize the website, some social media advertising, some local print advertising, and things of that nature.
Okay, cool. And then with the facility side, it's just like, hey, going out, to events in the community, your parents are ingrained in the business networks, just going and networking. Let me ask you this. Of the 4 facilities that you're working with now, when did each of them start, working with you? Like, have you been working with all 4 of them for a number of years, or have, any of them come on, pretty recently?
Yeah. So they've all been kind of at different times. The original one and the facility who we actually have a contract with, I'd say was about a year and a half, 2 years ago that they came on. And they were the first of the partner facilities that we currently partner with. And then over the past year is kind of when those other relationships have developed with the other facilities. And with those facilities, like I said, it was a little less formal. There's no contract or anything. It was kind of just situations where they had a need for transportation that they had identified. One way or another, conversations got started with my parents at those times, and they were able to come to the agreement to use us. But I think, I wasn't intricately involved with the business at the time that most of these partnerships started. But I know the main contract, like I said, about a year and a half ago, and then over the past year is when the other 3 have developed. And, those sort of started off small. I think the companies were kind of just testing it out. Like, okay, will they actually show up on time and give us the rides we need and everything? And, after about a month or 2 of somewhat of a testing out period, it seemed like, okay, now they're sending us all the rides that they have. And it's been much more consistent with them over the past year. So all of those contracts have pretty much come to fruition over the past year and a half. And yeah, so I guess you could say they're kind of new, but not too new. They're pretty established at this point.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
And you were mentioning that, like, in Santa Fe, there's not a lot of NEMT businesses, yet there's a lot of need for NEMT services.
Just from all of the companies we've kind of spoken to in the medical community, a lot of times people, well, they're missing appointments or not getting to the things that they need to get to, which is obviously where we want to come in and say, hey, we can stop that from happening. And then B, a lot of times they'll get their caretaker or someone like that, or a family member to take them, or a friend. So just kind of going the back route and finding, I guess, the not officially professional ways, either friends or family. Caretakers technically at times are not supposed to always drive the people they're doing caretaking for, I guess because it puts them at somewhat of a legal liability if they're not like on the insurance for the car that they're driving and things like that. So yeah, so that's from our understanding and the conversations I personally have started having. That seems to be kind of the biggest thing right now that people are doing, is just kind of using their caretakers to get where they have to go, or family friends.
So like if a person is wheelchair bound,
Mhm.
like obviously in the traditional NEMT world, you got to get a vehicle that has wheelchair capacity, right? You got to load
Yeah.
the wheelchair in there, be able to strap it down. I mean, if it's just a caretaker, like I'm assuming that these caretakers, they're not all driving vehicles that are, wheelchair accessible, right?
Yeah, no, definitely. You're completely right.
So are they just like taking the person, out of the wheelchair, putting them in a normal seat, folding up the wheelchair and putting that in like the trunk or something? Is that how they're doing it?
From my understanding, yeah, as much as much as that is probably a bit of a burden on them, and again, kind of where we see like, hey, like you don't got to do all that. We can come in and solve the problem. But yeah, as far as I know, that's kind of the situation. And it's not always. Sometimes when people are in a wheelchair, they might be a little more able to do something like getting in and out of a regular car compared to other potential customers who just might not be capable of doing that type of thing. But that's definitely happening. There's definitely people missing appointments and things of that nature just because they can't do it. Or this example, like you brought up, like I'm sure there's a lot of situations where there's caretakers and people who are just like, yeah, we can't manage this. Like we don't have a wheelchair accessible car, or we can't get them in and out of the car and things of that nature. So yeah, it's definitely a problem that can be addressed, I would say. And I kind of something I'm continuing to try and wrap my head around on as I have all these conversations, just like, okay, like how are people actually getting here? What's going on? Why is it always caretakers? Are they really able to handle the workload that comes with transporting someone who's in a wheelchair, and that type of thing?
This is really interesting, Alex, because this is a situation where your competition is not other NEMT businesses. Your competition is people transporting, disabled passengers just in an unsafe way, which is just how they're used to doing it.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it is. And I mean, from my point of view, it's a little bit of a challenge as well, because it's a little different than if it was just a random, another NEMT company that's operating and then you're trying to like get business from them. This isn't exactly the same type of thing. You know what I mean? It's a little bit of a unique challenge and trying to figure out how we get in there and how we get our name to those people and for them to know that we exist. And it's not necessarily like top of mind necessarily for caretakers, even though they're kind of getting stuck with a lot of the transportation themselves. I think a lot of them kind of just look at it as like, oh, this is what's involved with trying to help this person. I got to help them out how I can. But obviously, we really believe in our service, as anybody else would, and we would love to get in there kind of, and finding those ends is a little bit of a unique challenge, but we're definitely making some headway.
Wow. This is so interesting. This is like a situation where you basically have to educate your entire market about what NEMT even is in the first place. Like people need it. They just don't even know that it exists. So they're just going in normal vehicles, folding up wheelchairs.
Yeah. No, that's a great way of putting it. We really do have to kind of educate them that, hey, like there's this whole industry that exists. This is a thing, like people run entire businesses based off of this. So yeah, no, that was a good way of putting it.
Nobody's really checking for ADA compliance in your area. It seems like it.
It's been a little bit surprising, the lack of oversight on a lot of things out here, at least from my point of view. But yeah, it doesn't seem like there's the most oversight as compared to kind of the research I've been doing and things I've been seeing in other areas.
So it's been a little over a month that you joined the business. First thing you did was implement Bambi.
Yeah.
Can you tell us about, how the business has changed before implementing Bambi and afterward?
Yeah, definitely. So there was a lot of taking orders and kind of scattering is what I would call it when discussing it with my parents. But, taking everything pen and paper, trying to figure everything out kind of in your own mind. When you get an order, you're scattering, calling people to see if they're available, seeing if we can handle it, seeing if we can't handle it. And with Bambi, that's just become a little bit more streamlined. We kind of have everything on our screen to look at ahead of time. They were kind of had their filing system where they were looking through all their files and everything like that. So it's helped us streamline how we take trip orders, and then how we communicate with our drivers as well. It's helped streamline. We used to basically either have them come into our office and pick up the physical piece of paper that we took the order on, or we would send them a picture of the physical piece of paper of the different orders. Now with Bambi, that all basically just automatically, flows through to the driver app. So they're able to just check their app rather than having to deal with us communicating with them constantly. Obviously, there's still some communication, but in general, it feels like it's provided a lot of relief in that sense. Kind of the drivers, it's just, hey, check your app when you have a shift and you'll see what rides you have. So I feel like streamlining is the main thing. We have kind of a centralized place now where we're taking transportation orders, where our drivers can look at their apps to see what they have going on. And it's also something I've been doing a lot of is evaluating the past orders. So like this morning, for example, I was looking at all the orders we've had over the past month, evaluating what the average trip distance was, the average revenue, those types of things, so we can kind of get a better grasp on some of the KPIs that we've been working out since I joined the company. So yeah, I say overall it's kind of just streamlined our processes. We have a central point that we can work out of, and everything's kind of stemming from that central point now rather than being a little bit more all over the place originally. Run, Bambi, run.
Awesome.
Perfect.
Thanks, Alex.